What? It's how much? Did you guys know this? 2020, 30% increase in helicopter rescues over 2019. 2021, triple the helicopter rescues over 2019. 200,000 NT per hour. Who are these irresponsible hikers who are bankrupting Taiwan? We better check with the National Airborne Service Corps to see what they have to say about this. 你好，我是小费。如果你想看一个外国人一直 blah 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 blah，请订阅分享，谢谢。2019, 171 rescues. What? 2020, 229 rescues. It's going up. It's true. 2021, 318 rescues. Oh my goodness, it is true. Is it just gonna keep going up forever? Taiwan's gonna have no money left. If it was triple what it was 2 years ago, it must be 20 times what it was 10 years ago. Oh, okay. So they picked 2019 because it's the lowest year on record, and I guess there wasn't any typhoons that year. And then we keep comparing statistics to the abnormally low year to kind of create a panic and make it look like it's going up real high. And actually, 2020 was still really low, even it was higher than 2019, and even 2021 is still below the average. So what's going on here? This is a video I wanted to do for a long time because it's just so nonsense. You always hear in the media and people talking about on Facebook, whatever, that they're just so expensive to have a mountain rescue program, and that this is sort of like bankrupting Taiwan, and every time somebody goes out, you know, wow, a helicopter, hundreds of thousands of NT, thousands of US dollars an hour just to rescue anybody. So what actually is happening? Quick breakdown, most of the rescues and all this stuff, it happens when you have floods and typhoons and natural disasters, and that's one of the main purposes of the National Airborne Corps. Size making noise. And also, sometimes hikers get caught up in the mountains, they go pick them up. Out in sea, you know, boats get stranded, swimmer gets blown off course, whatever happens, the National Airborne Corps are there to go rescue those persons. So, big props to the National Airborne Corps. Excuse me. I'm sitting behind my car to block the wind. I hope it's working. You know, normally I'd be on the other side of the awning. We're out here in Pingdong. So long story short is that in Taiwan, it's generally assumed that there is a huge amount of mountain wilderness helicopter rescues and that this is a very expensive program. This is backed up by the publication that it costs 200,000 NT, about 7,000 US dollars per hour to fly these helicopters. These are the Black Hawk UH-60M helicopters that the National Airborne Service Corps uses, right? This is in contrast to places like Germany where they do rescues for about 20,000 NT. So why is it 10 times more expensive in Taiwan? So we're going to look into these numbers and figure out where those costs come from and why helicopters are so expensive, and we can try to compare that to the value of the program. Like, should we even allow hiking at all? I don't know. So let's take a look at it. First, we're talking about hundreds of rescues a year. In 2021, the NASC says there was 318. That's up from 2020, and that's up from 2019, but it's not up from the years previous. Especially when you look at 2009, when they made a disaster, it's over 1,000 people per year, and it was in 2004, it was over 1,400. So there's a huge variation, but still the numbers are not that high, like 100 people a year, 300 people a year, 1,000 people a year. Let's take a look at that and see how that compares to total flights done. So there's 318 rescues, there's actually 450 flights, 190 of them were in the mountains, 264 of them were in the ocean or the sea. So that's 3.8% of total flights to rescue people in the mountains, 5.3% of total flights to rescue people at the sea. Well, wait, what? Oh, that's not very much. 78% of flights are for training and for maintenance. How many is that? 3,900 flights out of 4,900 flights were for maintenance and training. All the other stuff is like reconnaissance, putting out fires, but the vast majority, 80%, across all years, it doesn't really change very much, across all years, is for training and maintenance. So what does it mean? It means that even if you doubled the amount of rescues that needed to happen in the mountains or in the ocean, it wouldn't affect the total flying that much, meaning it wouldn't affect the budget that much. So why is it that we say that it costs 200,000 NT to rescue somebody in the mountains? Doesn't that mean it would cost 3,900? Hang on, I need a calculator. So doesn't that mean then it would cost 800 million NT to do these training and maintenance flights? No, of course not. It costs much, 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 much more than that. So where does this 200,000 NT per hour figure come from? This is the equation right here. You can see it's very complicated. That is the figure for how much it would cost to operate a helicopter based on how many times you're flying it, the cost of the helicopter, the cost of the pilots, and all of these other figures. That's all calculated in. There's a very extensive study done in Germany that showed the cost of all of these mountain rescues, and basically, it starts up here and it goes down, and you see some jumps, and down and see some jumps like that. Obviously, the more you operate your helicopter, the lower the price per flight is, but then you have these big spikes in the price for the maintenance intervals. After a certain number of hours flying or a certain number of time, you have to do a maintenance interval. Those are very expensive, but still, the general gist of it is that the more you use it, the cheaper it is. And so this 200,000 NT per hour figure is actually provided by the manufacturer. If you use your helicopters for 12 hours per day over the course of 30 years, the average cost per hour for purchasing the aircrafts, for all of the spare parts, for the maintenance intervals, for the fuel, for the pilots, and everything else that happens over the course of 30 years will average to be 200,000 NT per hour. It does not mean that every time you fly, it costs you 200,000 NT per hour. For the life of the aircraft, it costs 200,000 NT per hour, which is still 10 times more than it costs in Germany. So I have the procurement documents for these helicopters, and I'll share them, the link at the bottom. They're in Chinese and some parts in English. You can see here exactly where these costs come from. So the NASC, they got 15 UH-60M Black Hawk helicopters. They paid $28 million each, so about $432 million for 15 helicopters. That's listed here as 140E, or 14 billion NT dollars. Go down a bit, and then we see they spent another 6.6 billion NT, or like $150 million, on 2 years of spare parts and training. So it's pretty easy to see early on that this 200,000 NT per hour figure is not because of the fuel. This is because they're just astronomically expensive. We'll go down, we can take a look at these spare parts and see what they're for. The GPS systems, $100,000 each. They got the 4 of those, maybe some sort of upgraded GPS. So that was $450,000. These are all US dollars, by the way. Fire extinguishers are $1,000 each. They needed 30 fire extinguishers, 2 for each aircraft. That was over $1 million NT spent on fire extinguishers for 30 fire extinguishers. The paint jobs, $3.7 million US dollars to paint 6 aircrafts. So it's about $600,000 US dollars to paint the aircrafts. Those buckets, they had the buckets that pick up the water and they use them to put out fires. So that's about $400,000 each for those buckets. So the Bambi bucket system, 15 of those, $5.2 million, $170 million NT. These things are expensive. They're really sort of ridiculously priced. They're way over the top. A searchlight. Holy crap! Searching light. $4.8 million. So the lights cost like $800,000 each. It's a lot of money, right? Jeez. I mean, $6 million for the field service representative. U.S. government technical assistance, another $3 million. Pre and post technical assistance, another $6 million. Yeah, so the prices here are really high. It's getting up to like 250E, for these costs. 250E is like a huge number. So how do you do the accounting for that? You use the amount of time you use the aircraft times the amount of times you have the aircraft, and you amortize that out over the life of the aircraft. And so it's actually much, much more than this because, you need more maintenance. This is just 2 years of maintenance. You need 30 years of maintenance. So this huge number, 250E, and this is like baked into the cost of the project. This is the cost to buy them and the cost to maintain them. So the real cost of mountain rescue is actually only about 20 to 30,000 NT. It just drives me nuts, when I see in the news, they're like, if you're in an emergency situation, you better not call for a rescue because it's expensive. No, that is so bad. It makes my head hurt. The fact that you just have mountain rescue at all is what makes all of the mountain recreation possible. So all of the tourism in the mountains, all the hiking, all the, whatever else you do, it's just all of that is predicated on the notion that there's a system for getting people out of there. So you'd have to shut down everything, shut down those economies. I don't know how big they are, but they're much bigger then what's 200 times 30,000? Whatever those economies are, it's much bigger than the 200,000 US dollars that are spent on the fuel to go rescue people in the mountains. $200,000 a year, US dollars. It's not that much. I mean, let's put this in like the procurement things. Like, what can you get for $200,000? Let's see. You can get a DVR system. It's pretty close. So the digital video recorder on these airplanes, you got 6 of them for $976,000 US dollars. So they're about, $160,000 each. It's pretty close. So if you want, instead of 6 DVR systems, you can have 7 DVR systems and just tell everybody in the mountains to just, go F yourself. Like, you're not getting a rescue. We're going to spend that money on a DVR system instead. It's just nuts. So you have to wonder, why is the Taiwanese government spending $600 million on these hugely expensive aircraft? You don't need such expensive helicopters to go rescue people. I mean, the Germans do it in helicopters that cost $5 million each and $3 million a year to operate. That's operating 12 hours a day for a year. And we should point out that in the German system, they take doctors to the people in the mountains. Like, if you have a mountain injury, they're flying doctors to the people who need assistance because they think that they get better health outcomes that way. So actually they have a better system and it costs less. So the real main difference is that they're not using military aircraft, they're using civilian aircraft. Why is Taiwan using military aircraft? Well, there could be lots of reasons. When I ask people, immediately they say, oh, well, this is how we get goodwill with America, and blah, 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 blah. This is how we get meetings with American politicians, is by buying military equipment. And fine. I'm not going to get into whether that's a good way to do things or whether that's a bad way to do things. But I think that we need to recognize that, well, that's not the fault of people who are hiking. That's not the fault on the fishermen who are stranded in the ocean, right? You can say that the system is expensive for this reason, but that's a political reason that has nothing to do with recreation. And I think that it could also be other reasons too. For example, the pilots that fly these helicopters, a lot of them are, retired from the Air Force. They're military pilots. They have military training on these helicopters because it's the same platform that the military uses. So it's very easy to, switch them over. Although, we should point out that in here it says that there's $31 million for pilot training, so I don't know how much savings you really get there. But it might not just have to do with American Taiwanese politics, it might have to do with, the way the military is structured as well. But regardless of any of that, it's just that has nothing to do with recreation. The cost of rescue, it's not because the marginal cost of flying out to save somebody is expensive. It's because the entire system is expensive. I also point out that the purpose of the system is not really for hiking. When you look at all of the training that they're doing and all of the equipment that they have, this is because Taiwan is occasionally subject to very large earthquakes and very large typhoons. And in this situation, you have hundreds of thousands of people who are stranded. That's what this system is built. And that's what the investment is for. Like, this system doesn't exist because occasionally people get lost in the mountains. This system exists because Taiwan can have natural disasters. It's good to invest in a system. You can argue there's a cheaper way to do it, but you need this system. So the money for rescues it's just negligible. I mean, like, when you compare it to the cost of the programs, it's almost nothing. It's just fuel. There's other reasons, like, not to do rescues. Like, flying helicopters is dangerous. It's a high-risk job. All the pilots at the NASC, they just got like a 50% raise to, I think it's 140,000 NT a month now. So it's a high salary in Taiwan. It's not a ridiculous salary, not for something like this, but it's the point, of course, is to recognize that these people are putting themselves at risk to do this job. And I think that's an important reason to try to limit rescues as much as possible. But when you bring up the cost and you talk about the cost, it costs this much to rescue, and if you need a helicopter rescue up the mountains, you're going to get fined this much. And Taiwan has already started giving out fines. You're just putting more people at risk, because when somebody is in a dangerous situation and they need a rescue, that's going to be in the back of their mind. I can't afford 200,000 NT or 2 million NT or whatever ridiculous number that they're going to throw at me. So I'm going to attempt to get out of here without a rescue. And that's when things get worse. That's when small injuries become big injuries. That's when things happen that you can't take back, fatalities in the mountains and stuff like that. I think that we shouldn't be naive about what this system is and where the costs come from. So I think we need to recognize this for what it is and just try not to buy into the hysteria of the media anytime there's like a rescue or something like that. People needed a rescue. These guys, they did their job. They did an awesome job and, pulled them out of the mountains. And the fact that it's a little bit over 2019, which is the lowest year in history of the program, is irrelevant. that's not where the costs of this program are coming from. If you have a contrary opinion to that, you want to argue with the numbers, I'll link to everything in the bottom. You can let me know in the comments. I'll read the comments. I especially like hearing contrarian opinions. Let me have it. Talk to y'all later. Y'all have a great night.